The second running of the World 600 was a race everyone wanted to win. The race had already established itself as prestigious by being one of the longest races on the schedule and the earnings for winning. But the race was marred by one wreck involving Reds Kagle, a horrific wreck in which the driver lost his left leg. Little did anyone think at the time, but a monumental comeback was on the horizon for the driver, one that would take almost 16 years. Right before the video starts, make sure you guys leave a like if you enjoy, and subscribe if you haven't already, as we are closing in on 75,000 subscribers. Anyway, let's get right into the video. The first World 600 would take place in the middle of June 1960. Not only was it NASCAR's longest race in terms of distance, it was one of the fastest races in terms of speed on the schedule. It was behind the 2.5-mile superspeedway in Daytona, and right with Atlanta, which also hosted its first race in 1960. Despite construction delays postponing the first World 600 at Charlotte, over 35,000 fans flocked to the raceway. The endurance race was just as advertised. Only 24 of the 60 cars that started the event made it to the 300-lap mark. The high speeds, testament of mechanical innovation, and the fearless drivers made the first event one to remember. Jolie Johnson took the checkered flag to win the first 600 by over 4 laps. The event was quickly deemed one of the biggest of the year. The prestige of winning the longest race of the year was a true testament of endurance, precision, focus, equipment, and preparation. The second running of the race was much more hyped up, as there were 2 qualifying races leading up to the event. Richard Petty and Joe Weatherly won their qualifying races, earning themselves front-row starting positions for the big show. Unlike Daytona, the qualifying races only set the front row. Everyone except Petty and Weatherly had to re-qualify for position in the days leading up to the race. Interestingly, there was another Grand National race on the same day as these qualifying races, all the way across the United States in Riverside, California. Lloyd Dane took the checkered flag in a pretty lackluster field. See, all the stars were over in Charlotte for the qualifying races, which allowed many underdog drivers rack up some good finishes and money. The day before the 1961 World 600, there was another race at Ascot Park. Eddie Gray found victory lane in a similar scenario as Lloyd Dane. But over in Charlotte, during qualifying, there was one particular driver who impressed everyone: David Pearson. Pearson was a second-year driver out of Spartanburg and had never even won a race before. But by the end of qualifying, the young kid was the best of the rest, putting his Pontiac into third place for the start of the race. Junior Johnson raced John Massoni's car for the second World 600 qualifying race and finished second, but raced in his familiar Holly Farms Pontiac for the 600. This left John without a driver, and he picked up David Pearson. Joe Weatherly led the opening lap of the race before Pearson passed him to lead the second lap. Weatherly took the lead back for a few laps, then Ralph Earnhardt took over. It was Ralph, Pearson, and occasionally Jack Smith exchanging the lead several times over the course of the first 100 laps. Jolie Johnson, the 1960 winner of the race, went out on lap 46 after he wrecked. Marvin Panch and Curtis Turner went out of the race after Panch blew a tire and collected Turner's car. I say Turner's car because it was actually Larry Frank, his relief driver, who was at the wheel. But the competitive race was marred by one major incident, involving Reds Kagle just past halfway into the event. In turn 3, the driver lost control of his car and hit the guardrail head-on. The guardrail impelled the car and ultimately took off Kagle's left leg below the knee. He was rushed to Cabarrus Memorial Hospital in Concord, where his left leg had to be amputated above the knee. The 29-year-old driver from Maryland also suffered many more cuts, bruises, and a fractured right ankle. Despite this scary accident, it was reported in the following days that he was in fair condition. His wife and 2 of his kids were at the track. It seemed like he wouldn't just pull through, but make a good enough recovery to live a life as normal as anyone could with just one leg. But this was truly just an incident way too close for comfort. If the guardrail impelled the car just 1 foot to the right, it could have been much worse. 20 feet of steel punctured the car, which traveled through the engine compartment, firewall, and exited through the door. The caution was out for 25 laps because of the incident, which is really not too long when you think about repairing 20 to 50 feet of guardrail. NASCAR President Bill France was among the workers that redug post holes and strung steel cables across the gap so the race could go on. It was reported that the initial guardrail was improperly installed, so I'm sure this one wasn't much better. It goes without saying, but this was unfortunately Kagle's final ride in the Grand National Series. In 6 years of competition, he competed in just 25 races and finished with 9 top 10s. His best showing was a 4th place finish at Richmond just a couple of years prior. But this isn't where the story ends, for the race or for Kagle. As far as the race goes, David Pearson went on to win his first Grand National race in one of the biggest stages in dramatic fashion. He blew a tire with a couple of laps to go, but continued on with just 3 tires, reportedly going about 30 miles per hour around the track. Fortunately, he had a big enough lead to best Fireball Roberts. He'd go on to dominate the series for years to come, including 3 championships and 105 race wins over the next 20 years. For Kagle, an incredible comeback would take place. 16 years later, in 1977, the driver, who was now in his mid-40s, made a NASCAR comeback. It would be in the NASCAR Late Model Sportsman Series, which is now the Xfinity Series. Incredibly, he was able to make a start. Even crazier, in his second race at Beltsville Speedway, his hometown track, he found victory lane. But this wasn't even a surprise. He dominated this track. 4 years earlier, during a 1973 interview with the Freelance Star, Reds described himself as a pretty successful race driver who happens to have only one leg. First, he talked about the accident. He went on to say that the incident could have been a lot worse. He could have lost his right leg, the one he pumped the gas pedal with. He was the unquestioned king of Beltsville Speedway, a track known for its fast speeds and fat purses. In this 1973 interview, it was reported that over the past few seasons, he had a winning percentage of almost 60%. So it's safe to say that Kagle was able to continue living out his dream. The guy was winning so much that fans booed him as he walked out for driver intros. He just won too much. But his return did not come without controversy. Kagle revealed that he sued NASCAR for negligence following his wreck, and this went on for about 8 years, so about to 1970. That entire time, NASCAR suspended his license. During this time, he was doing some mechanic work and racing at some non-NASCAR sanctioned tracks. But after the case was settled out of court, his license was reinstated, and Kagle began racing at Beltsville, a NASCAR track. From there, he did nothing but win. Just what an incredible journey. He ended his 1973 interview with this quote, "I've come through this in relatively good shape. At least I can walk and talk. I've seen some guys pulled from wrecks that it just makes you sick." That's it for this video. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.